At UFC 280, who will become the new UFC lightweight champion? Islam Makhachev or Charles Oliveira? That's a very simple question with a very complex answer. Many fans and fighters have come out to give their different opinions on who they think will win and how exactly the fight's gonna go. But we believe there's a bigger picture to this fight that almost no one is seeing. A bigger picture that goes beyond the hype in the media, and a bigger picture that starts like this. Right now, Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev is the biggest and most anticipated fight of the year. The first thing that many fans didn't see coming was its betting odds. It opened as a 3-1 in favor of Makhachev. And if you have no idea what that means, it just shows that the bets staked on Makhachev winning the fight are 3 times more than those on Oliveira. And this isn't some automated process by betting sites. It just reflects who the fans are putting their money on. Now that's a very interesting factor in this fight because once again, Charles Oliveira is coming in as an underdog for a title fight. And Makhachev, despite this being his first title fight ever, is the favorite to win. And we really can't help but ask, why? Why is Islam the favorite? Well, for one, we know Islam has been tagged the next great fighter in the lightweight division, just like his mentor, Khabib Nurmagomedov. And there's no disputing that, because Islam's wrestling is as close as you can get to Khabib's. The double leg locks, the ground and pound, the pressure, it's phenomenal. Anyone who has stepped into the cage against Khabib can testify to the fact that Khabib is a complete beast inside the octagon. But Khabib is not Islam. It's like we seem to forget that these are two totally different people. Yes, they both grew up in Dagestan. Yes, they were both mentored by the great Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, Khabib's father. But Khabib was on a whole different level than Islam is on right now. Regardless of any of that, Islam is truly a force to reckon with in the lightweight division. The Islam Makhachev we saw between 2010 and 2014 isn't the same Makhachev we see now. Back then, we could see Makhachev smiling his way to the cage and unbothered by the fight, because he knew he was probably going to win. But on a very dark night in 2015 at UFC 192, that smile was wiped off his face permanently. And the man who did it was Adriano Martins. During the fight, Makhachev swung a left-hand jab, but Martins returned with a right hand that knocked him out cold. Also, keep in mind that Adriano was a former Sambo champion, just like Makhachev, so their grappling canceled out, and they had to fight on their feet. Islam has said countless times that it was a lucky shot from Adriano, but the point we're making here is that we saw a totally different version of Islam Makhachev from that moment on. He smiled way less, he became very aggressive in the octagon, and completely dominated his next series of fights. His last 4 fights alone just show more than anything else his hunger for a UFC title. Just take a look at the Dan Hooker fight. Dan was in a lot of trouble from the moment Makhachev took him down to the canvas. Dan's eyes told us a story that night. A story of Islam's overwhelming pressure on the ground. And in his Bobby Green fight? Nah, that's just one moment where the fighter gave up even before the fight ended. So, maybe Islam Makhachev's record proves he can defeat Charles Oliveira. His ground game is exceptional, his striking is great, and his MMA record is almost perfect. But if there's one thing we've come to learn in recent times, it's the fact that you can never, and we mean never, count Charles Oliveira out. Charles Oliveira is a living and breathing embodiment of the rags to riches life story. Growing up in favela, Brazil, Oliveira has transcended to the high altar of success in the UFC. Just like Makhachev, Oliveira's career also had a turning point. Before entering the UFC, he had an impressive 14-win streak, slicing through his opponents one at a time with no pedals to pull the brakes on his astronomical performances. But when getting into the UFC, Charles somehow lost his fighting skills. It was like they evaporated from his body, making him a stepping stone for other fighters to ascend the rankings of the division. Also like Makhachev's story, all it took was one moment to turn his fortune around. One moment that revitalized his insatiable hunger to be the best lightweight in the world. That golden moment came at UFC 225 when he submitted Clay Guida in the first round via guillotine choke. From there, he became so technically proficient, there was no weakness in his game anymore. In 2020, he was on a 6-fight win streak, and after Khabib dropped the lightweight championship, he defeated Michael Chandler via TKO in just the second round to become the new champion. You need to understand that there was a supreme awakening of Charles's hunger to be not just the champion, but the greatest lightweight fighter in the world. He went through Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, and Justin Gaethje in just a year and 5 months. These guys are the deadliest fighters in the division, and Oliveira just made it look so easy. He took hits in those fights, he was dropped, and he was almost knocked out. But just as Dustin Poirier said, destiny doesn't make mistakes. And it definitely didn't for Charles Oliveira. To put into context how it truly was his destiny to be champion, we witnessed for the first time in UFC history a champion losing his title right on the scale even before the main fight. Regardless, Oliveira triumphed by submitting Justin Gaethje. He seamlessly took out Gaethje's back and choked him out in the first round. He now has an 11-fight win streak. He now has the most submission wins in UFC history. He now has the most finishes in UFC history across all divisions. How insane is that? Well, let me tell you, the champion has a name, and his name is Charles "Du Bronx" Oliveira. A certain man who seems to agree totally with this is the notorious Conor McGregor. Okay, that was way too dramatic, but Conor actually believes Oliveira would defeat Islam Makhachev. In a question and answer session with his fans on Twitter, he was asked by one fan who he'd pick between Oliveira and Islam. McGregor replied, "Ali, and easily." Now, for some reason, certain fans are fuming with foam in their mouths for this tweet by McGregor, while others believe it was just a way to spite Islam given his rivalry with the Eagle, Khabib Nurmagomedov. On the other hand, Khabib also gave his predictions. He believes Islam would win easily. He also believes that deep down in Oliveira's heart, he knows he can't defeat Makhachev. And maybe he wouldn't even show up for the fight. Islam then took up to the no-show part and tweeted a photo that reported Charles would be in Abu Dhabi 2 weeks before the fight. He then captioned it, "2 weeks before the fight? Charles and his team not in Abu Dhabi yet. Should I start worry?" As a form of response, Oliveira posted a video of himself and his team in Abu Dhabi on Twitter. In the middle of all the drama is a man sitting across the room named Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski has stated numerous times that he's willing to step in as a replacement if either fighter doesn't show up for the fight. And you can't blame the man. He's done everything there is to do at the featherweight division. He's washed through the division, and there's simply nothing for him right now. So it's only right that he seeks to plaster his name among the greats as a UFC 2-division champion. Volkanovski asked, and the UFC answered, he's been named the official replacement for the fight. Now, the big picture we talked about at the beginning isn't who's stronger and who has a better record. No, it's about who can stick to his game plan more. Believe it or not, both men have what it takes to win the fight. Oliveira doesn't have a problem going to the ground, and neither does Islam. So it's a question of who can stick to the plan, who can remain composed in the rounds, and who can deliver exactly as their coaches tell them to. That's who's going to win the fight. These are two fighters in their prime. Fighters who have the best abilities in the division and are kryptonite to each other. Islam Makhachev is very tough. No, that's wrong. He's scary and viciously runs over his opponents. On the other hand, Oliveira is willing to step into the belly of the beast and reclaim his title. So maybe Charles Oliveira will become the new champion. Maybe the fight doesn't even go to the ground. And maybe, just maybe, you'd like this video, comment who you want to win down below, and subscribe to our channel for more awesome videos like this. But once again, at UFC 280, who will become the new UFC lightweight champion? Islam Makhachev or Charles Oliveira? We'll have to wait and find out.